Well, happy Wednesday. It hardly seems possible that it's here. And what I'm going to do this Wednesday is something I've done for a couple Wednesdays. And you can see creeping over the top of the screen the very descriptive terminology, the. And I'll bet most of you who are consistent listeners know what's to follow. And I will show you. The Poetry Remedy. Prescriptions for the Heart, Mind, and Soul by William Sieghart. Truly, of all the poetry books, this is my favorite. I never get tired of leafing through it, and I'm going to share more with you today. Now, supposing you need some moral guidance. Your ambitiousness is giving you problems. Your elegance, failure, lack of self-belief, loss of self. Golly, gee, what a problematic situation I'm in today. If, which we have read before, but I'm going to read again because I love it so, by Rudyard Kipling, is the UK's favorite poem by pretty much any metric. It wins every poll, and what's more, a couplet from the poem is inscribed above the player's entrance to Wimbledon's Centre Court. You don't get any more British than that. Wherever I've read poems to people, particularly my children, this is the one that they've asked to hear again. This is the one that inspired them the most. If encodes a lot of what, at least according to British folklore, makes up our national identity. And yet, it's about so much more than just Britishness. There's a nobility and a fortitude to the character Rudyard Kipling sketches here that can resonate with anyone of any culture. Someone who is self-effacing, kind, thoughtful, brave, spirited, productive, and ultimately true to himself, or, despite the of its time final line, herself. The person Kipling describes is accessible and generous, and yet in some deeply personal way, they are untouchable. Triumph and disaster, kings and crowds can all distort the way we see ourselves, but none of them is under our control. Kipling's figure looks on them all with equanimity. We must remember that our successes and the esteem of others do not change who we are at our core, and should lead us neither into arrogance nor into self-doubt. Kipling advises us to hold true to who we are, even in the face of corrupting influences. He reminds us that we have whole worlds within ourselves, and that we alone are the masters of them. No outside influence, no person or circumstance can touch these interior worlds without our permission. Neither foes nor loving friends can hurt us if we have a strong enough sense of self. That's a great lesson for all of us. And now, if by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated. Don't give away to hating. And yet, don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it all on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will, which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Now, don't you want to stand up and cheer? Well, you're in front of your computer. You can do that. Nobody's watching. Now, another condition. Have I got a problem? Fear of mortality. Oh, it's also suitable for purposelessness and my bête noire, general malaise. Most of us imagine that our final thought on our deathbeds will be, to some extent, about what we have achieved. What impact have we made on the world? Who will remember us, and why? What have we achieved, and was it enough? In this poem, Mary Oliver offers us another option. Perhaps it's not what we do, but how we live that matters. This poem reminds me of an event I attended many years ago at a time before Buddhism was as popular as it is today. One of the Dalai Lama's inner circle was giving a talk to a rather hostile crowd of people in central London. At the end, A man put his hand up and rather pompously said, "Could you please tell me, in simple terms, the essential differences between your world and ours?" "Well," said the monk, "when I was young, the Dalai Lama sent me to Cambridge to study. And when I left, he told me to work in an English hospice where I've now been for 27 years. There I've discovered the most important difference between your world and mine. And it's this: you only understand the importance of living when you know you're going to die." Complete silence in the room. Somebody started crying. I thought this was the most brilliant rebuttal of the cynicism in the room. And Mary Oliver's poem tells us much the same thing, that living without an awareness of death is to miss out on something vital. Our determination to deny death's power over us robs us of the ability to make decisions with death in mind, to plan our meeting with death, as Oliver has. What that monk knew, just as this poet does, is that it is only through accepting death that we can truly live. And now, When Death Comes by Mary Oliver. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut. When death comes, like the measle pox, when death comes, like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door, full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like? That cottage of darkness. And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a daisy in the field, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence. And each body, a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. And when it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited the world. Powerful stuff, that. Another of my foibles. Insecurity. Oh, this is great. Also suitable for negative body image. I used to be able to look at my feet until my stomach intervened. Lack of confidence. Oh, I don't know if I could do that. Low self-esteem. Oh, such a schmuck. Feelings of unattractiveness. Where's the paper bag? Connor, I asked you to bring a paper bag. He left it. Okay, now we're back again. How we look, or rather how we think we look, is a huge concern for many of us. Women in particular can find their lives dominated by these insecurities. In a lot of ways, this is justified. Our society places a huge emphasis on attractiveness. Attractive people are treated as if they are more honest, more capable, and in some hard to define sense, more valuable as human beings. When we consider the impact that this can have on our lives, the idea that vanity is no more than a petty concern becomes ridiculous. Of course we care. But notice, I say attractiveness here, and not beauty. As Maya Angelou reminds us in the poem I like to prescribe for these worries, attractiveness isn't all about what we are. The precise dimensions of our chins and our waists, but instead, and perhaps to a surprising degree, about how we are and what we do with what our parents gave us. Our confidence, the sun of our smiles, our vitality, and the joy we find in life makes us more attractive than any surgery or fad diet ever could. Allowing ourselves to be brought down by our perceived imperfections will create only a new, far more real imperfection by denying us the greatest cosmetic of all, happiness. This is a poem I would advise absolutely anyone to read before a party. I can inject self-belief like a shot of adrenaline. Whether you want to be a phenomenal woman, a phenomenal man, or just a phenomenal person, Angelou has something to teach you. It's all within your grasp. Her head's not bowed, and yours needn't be either. The poem, Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model's size, but when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I am a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please. And to a man, the fellas stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, woo, it's the fire in my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman phenomenal woman. That's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman phenomenally. Woman. That is me. Now, you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't jump, shout about, or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care, 'cause I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. Now that'll buck up your courage for any event. The condition of not knowing who one is, i.e., finding yourself, internal voices. None of us is a single person, really. Who can say with absolute honesty that they are the same person among colleagues, old school friends, or family? Each of us is a nesting doll of selves, layer upon layer of different people jostling one another for dominance in any particular moment. We are the frightened child, the parent, the lover, the wise ancient, and the rebellious teenager. Sometimes we are all these things at once. The difficulty, of course, when we consider our vast spectrum of different selves, is in wondering and working out who's in charge. Pablo Neruda paints a picture of a scenario we've all known, one where we couldn't seem to say the right thing or behave as we knew we should. Sometimes it's when we're most desperate to impress or to rise to a challenge that we have the least control over who we become. The pressure to behave as we feel we ought to unleashes selves we didn't even know were rattling around in there. Suddenly, out comes the coward, the petulant toddler, the pessimist, or the bumbler. All of this can make us angry with ourselves and ourselves. It can make us want to lash out at the parts of ourselves that seem to be holding us back. At moments like these, it's important to be able to sit down with yourself, to speak gently inside your own head, as if you were saying a prayer or reading a poem. Reassure yourself, whichever part of you is unhappy, it's only through internal dialogue, through accepting your many selves and allowing them to express themselves, both to you and to one another, that you'll ever manage to herd them into the shape of a functional person. The only way to solve Neruda's problem is through this pragmatic, diplomatic approach. Forget the narrative of yourself, who you are and the stories you have written about yourself, and take an unbiased look at the reality. You are not a single person. You are a committee of different fragments, different pains and loves and regrets. Come to terms with that assembly of yours and learn how to love and respect them. That way, whichever of you is in charge, they will be generous to the others. Ultimately, that's all you can ask. We are many. Pablo Neruda, translated by Alistair Reed. Of the many men whom I am, whom we are, I cannot settle on a single one. They are lost to me under the cover of clothing. They have departed for another city. When everything seems to be set to show me off as a man of intelligence, the fool I keep concealed on my person takes over my talk and occupies my mouth. On other occasions, I'm dozing in the midst of people of some distinction. And when I summon my courageous self, a coward, completely unknown to me, swaddles my poor skeleton in 1,000 tiny reservations. When a stately home bursts into flames, instead of the fireman, I summon an arsonist who bursts on the scene, and he is I. There is nothing I can do. What must I do to distinguish myself? How can I put myself together? All the books I read, lionized, dazzling hero figures, brimming with self-assurance. I die with envy at them. And in films where bullets fly on the wind, I'm left in envy of the cowboys, left admiring even the horses. But when I call upon my dashing being, out comes the same old lazy self. So I never know who I am, nor how many I am, or who we will be being. I would like to be able to touch a bell and call up my real self, the truly me, because I really need my proper self. I must not allow myself to disappear while I am writing. I am far away. And when I come back, I have already left. I should like to see if the same thing happens to other people as it does to me. To see if as many people are as I am, and if they seem the same way to themselves when this problem has been thoroughly explored. I am going to school myself so well in things that when I try to explain my problems, I shall speak not of self, but of geography. Oh, another piece from Mary Oliver. Condition observed. It's a tough one. Self-recrimination. Also suitable for alienation, loneliness, regret, self-loathing. There's something about nature in poetry that always seems to speak to people. The natural world brings with it an extraordinary sense of vigor and renewal, one that, in turn, provides the perfect springboard for rethinking our own problems and difficulties. There's no worry so great that it can't be made small by the sweep of wild geese across an endless sky. The scale of such images helps us to escape from the constrained and often urban emotional patterns in which we can so easily become stuck. They prompt us to say to ourselves, I can overcome. In 17 lines, Mary Oliver's Wild Geese communicates a wonderful and quietly radical idea that we might treat the soft animals of our bodies with kindness. Allow yourself to love what you love, not only whom, you'll notice, but what. Feeling needn't always be held in check by rationality, especially when so many of our desires and compulsions relate to the animal in us. Well, rather than fight it, we should celebrate and nurture our animal self. So much stupider than us in some ways, and yet, in other ways, so much wiser. The attempt to civilize ourselves is often our greatest source of pain. Imagine a life in which we did not have to repent an undignified desire or a so-called simple, be still, savage thought. Oliver tells us that there is no need for self-flagellation that seems part and parcel of being a person, of being good. There's a small, wide-eyed animal within each of us that doesn't understand understand why we keep kicking it. All we need to do to overcome is to treat ourselves like a loyal pet, with love, forgiveness, and understanding. And now, Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Oh, that felt really good. And now, another poem that I read to you, albeit probably 4 months ago, but I'm going to read it again because we've established that rereading is okay, because each time we read something, it can mean something else to us. This is by one of my favorite poets. The Condition, Letting Go. It's also suitable for heartbreak, loss, and setbacks. It's a funny thing in life how resilient our identities are. You can choose to define yourself by anything, by your work, nationality, faith, relationship, or possessions. And yet, if by some accident or misstep this is stripped away, there you still stand, still the same person, still the same identity, and you're left to wonder, how did that trivial thing ever define me at all? Each of us has many layers of identifying factors, things that add together to make us who we are. But underneath all of those layers lies something not so easily put into words: our self. And no matter what you may lose along the way, be it keys or a continent, your own self will still be there, unlosable, changing, and yet ultimately changeless. Learning to let go which is what this poem is all about, is the first step to discovering who you are beneath the perfect house or the job or the tortured relationship or whatever else it may be that is dominating your self-image. These things are not you. And however valuable they may be in the moment, you can and you will survive without them. In fact, the more certain you are that you can't tolerate losing something, that it is something that it is fundamental to you in some way, the greater the uncertainty it will be masking. And it is these uncertainties deep within ourselves that offer us the greatest insights into who we are and why we do what we do. However great the disaster, however great the loss, there is insight to be gained from it. And remember, it is only through practice that we can learn the art of losing gracefully. One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seemed filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, faces and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these things will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch. And look, my last, or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Oh, I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. Oh, I miss them. But it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you. The joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. It's evident. The art of losing's not too hard to master. Though it may look like, write it like disaster. Oh, and in closing, I'm going back to another favorite poet. And the condition, if you're feeling this, don't worry, I've got a solution. Guilt at not living in the moment, suitable for feelings of inadequacy, self-recrimination, stress, and worrying. All of those are phrases in my national personal song of being. I like Billy Collins' poem, The Present, because it skewers something not all that different from the advice I often give in my poetry pharmacy and have given elsewhere in this book, See Condition, Failure to Live in the Moment, page 62. Let's see what that was about. Oh, you remember this. I read it to you. Bow wow. It's the Golden Retrievals, the poem about dogs, specifically golden retrievers. I love that poem. Now, back to the book. It finds a very amusing way of saying something quite important, that the pole-faced seriousness of our modern obsession with health and emotional balance is not the only way to live. We can be happy without making an effort to live in the moment or be mindful or do any of those things we all feel a buzz of guilt about ignoring. Of course, we could all benefit from living in the moment more than we do, but it is also true that to treat the present as anything more than a second home, however frequently visited, would be a catastrophe. As with anything else in the world, living in the moment is only useful in moderation. What's more, allowing ourselves to get caught up in the cultural panic about how we should live, how we should think, and how often and how deeply we should breathe can lead to more misery than well-practiced mindfulness could ever solve. If living in the moment doesn't suit you, it doesn't make sense to you, don't do it. Don't feel obliged to change your interior life to suit the faddish dictates of the self-help industry. Although there is real value in living in the moment, there is also real value in living how you want to live and accepting the parts of yourself that you can't change. If you're a fretter or a daydreamer or a reminiscer, celebrate it. Be yourself. That is the best advice any guru can give you. The present, Billy Collins. Much has been said about being in the present. It's the place to be, according to the gurus, like the latest club on the downtown scene. But no one, it seems, is able to give you directions. It doesn't seem desirable or even possible to wake up every morning and begin leaping from one second into the next until you fall exhausted back into bed. Plus, there'd be no past with so many scenes to savor and regret, and no future. The place you will die, but not before flying around with a jetpack. The trouble with the present is that it's always in a state of vanishing. Take the second it takes to end this sentence with a period. Already gone. What about the moment that exists between banging your thumb with a hammer and realizing you are in a whole lot of pain? What about the one that occurs after you hear the punchline, but before you get the joke? Is that where the wise men want us to live, in that intervening tick, the tiny slot that occurs after you have spent hours searching downtown for that new club, and just before you give up and head back home? And so we will conclude our Wednesday. But I've got to tell you a little, but not everything, about what we're doing on Friday. Well, you have been told not to do certain things. Don't you read certain books? I'm going to share with you a list of some books that have been banned since This week is book banning week. And I also, I shouldn't say this, but Connor is sitting beside me and he made me say it, so I will say it. I'm going to make an announcement of something special that's going on in our community, but I'm not going to tell you what it is until you see me on Friday, October, I think the 2nd. I'm terrible with dates, but maybe I'm close to right. And until then, have a wonderful experience with living in the moment of the moment and for the moment.